I was standing at the altar in a dress that cost more than my first car when I saw her walk through the chapel doors. My name is Jessica, and the moment my wedding turned into a war zone started with the sound of heels on marble and a voice I recognized from a voicemail I was never supposed to hear. She wore red. Bright, deliberate, impossible to ignore red. Not the kind of red you wear to celebrate someone else's happiness. The kind you wear when you want to burn the whole place down. My fiancé Marcus didn't see her at first. He was looking at me with those soft brown eyes that had convinced me 3 years ago that he was different from every other guy who had let me down. His hand was warm in mine. The efficient was mid-sentence, something about love and commitment and forever. The word forever was still hanging in the air when she cleared her throat loud enough that half the guests turned around. I felt Marcus's hand go rigid. That told me everything before my brain even caught up. The efficient stopped talking. My maid of honor, Kayla, whispered something sharp under her breath. My mom half stood from her seat in the front row like she was ready to physically remove whoever had the audacity to interrupt. But I didn't move. I just stared at this woman in red, standing in the center aisle with her arms crossed and her chin up like she owned the moment. And maybe she did because for those first few seconds nobody knew what to do. She looked straight at Marcus, ignoring me completely. "I think we need to talk," she said. Her voice carried. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The chapel had gone so quiet you could hear the flowers dripping condensation onto the floor. Marcus let go of my hand. That was the second thing that told me this wasn't a mistake or some crazy ex showing up for dramatics. He knew her. He knew why she was here. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, and his eyes darted toward the exit like he was calculating how fast he could run. I forced myself to stay calm. My heart was slamming against my ribs and my face felt hot, but I smiled. A small, tight smile that didn't reach my eyes. Then I did something nobody expected. I stepped down from the altar, holding my dress so I wouldn't trip, and walked straight toward her. If you want the full truth, hit like so this story reaches more people. My bridesmaids made these little gasping sounds behind me. I could hear my dad's voice low and angry asking someone what the hell was going on. Marcus said my name once, a weak attempt to stop me, but I ignored him. When I got close enough to see the woman's face up close, I realized two things. One, she was younger than me. Maybe 24, 25. Two, she looked scared under all that bravado. Her hands were shaking, and her lipstick was smudged at one corner like she had been biting her lip in the car before walking in. I stopped about 3 feet away from her. The red dress was cheaper than it looked from a distance. The seams were uneven, and the fabric pulled tight across her hips. She had the kind of beauty that photographs well but fades fast in real life. Sharp features, too much eyeliner, the desperate energy of someone who thought showing up here would give her power. "Hi," I said. My voice was steady, calm. I had practiced this tone in a mirror without knowing it for months every time I swallowed down a suspicion or ignored a late-night text Marcus tried to hide. "You must be Amber." Her face went pale. That was how I knew I was right. See, 3 weeks ago I had found a receipt in Marcus's gym bag. Just a stupid little receipt from a hotel bar in Portland, a city he had no business being in because he told me he was in Sacramento for a work conference. When I asked him about it, he laughed it off, said his coworker had used his card and he forgot. I almost believed him. Almost. But I had started paying attention after that. The way he angled his phone away from me when he texted. The new cologne. The night he came home with his shirt buttoned wrong. Little things that add up when you stop making excuses for someone. Then one night while he was in the shower, I did something I swore I would never do. I went through his phone. I know. I know how that sounds. But desperation makes you do things you judge other people for, and I was so tired of feeling crazy for noticing things he told me I was imagining. That was when I found her. Amber. Messages going back 7 months. Pictures I won't describe here. Promises that made my stomach turn. And one message thread from 2 weeks before the wedding where she told him she loved him and he said, "I know." Not "I love you too," just "I know." Like it was something he was managing instead of feeling. I didn't confront him then. I thought about it. I played out 100 different versions of that fight in my head, but every time I imagined it, he would lie. He would cry. He would apologize and beg and swear it meant nothing, and maybe I would believe him because I wanted to. So instead, I did something else. I started planning, not the wedding. The wedding was already planned. I started planning what came after. I called my cousin Leo, who works in private investigation, and asked him to dig deeper. I hired a lawyer and had her draft paperwork I hoped I wouldn't need. I moved money into an account Marcus didn't know about. I made copies of everything. The texts, the pictures, the hotel receipts I found after that first one. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom, not Kayla, not even my therapist. Because if I said it out loud, it would become real, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. Part of me wanted him to prove me wrong so badly that I kept going through the motions. Dress fittings, cake tastings, seating charts. I smiled at his parents, and I laughed at his best man's terrible jokes, and I told myself maybe I could just ignore it. Maybe I could marry him and fix it later. Maybe the affair would just fade once we were officially committed. I know how that sounds too. But you don't know what you'll tolerate until you're staring at it in a red dress in the middle of your wedding chapel. Amber stared at me like I had just slapped her. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. I smiled wider, the kind of smile that doesn't involve joy. "Because Marcus talks about you in his sleep." I lied, but she didn't need to know that. Behind me, I heard Marcus make a choking sound. The guests were fully invested now, heads swiveling between me, Amber, and Marcus like they were watching a tennis match. Someone's phone camera light flicked on. I made a mental note of who it was. My cousin Daniel. Always ready to document drama. Good. Let him record. Amber's confidence cracked a little more. She looked past me at Marcus, searching his face for some kind of instruction manual on what to do next. He didn't give her one. He just stood there frozen at the altar, looking like a man watching his life collapse in real time. I turned halfway so I could see both of them. This was the moment I had been preparing for without fully admitting it to myself. The moment where I could either fall apart or take control. "You came here to tell me something," I said to Amber. "So tell me." She hesitated. Her mouth opened and closed. For a second, I thought she might actually run, but then something hardened in her face. Probably anger at being put on the spot. Probably humiliation that this wasn't going the way she had imagined. "He doesn't love you," she said. Her voice got louder. "He loves me. He's been with me for almost a year. He was going to leave you, but he was too afraid to do it before the wedding because of your family's money." The chapel erupted, gasps, swearing. My dad stood up fully this time, and my uncle had to grab his arm to keep him from charging the aisle. My mom looked like she was about to faint. Kayla shouted something I couldn't quite hear, but it involved a word I definitely couldn't repeat in front of the officiant. Marcus finally found his voice. "That's not true," he said. It came out weak, pleading. "Jessica, she's lying. She's obsessed. I told her it was over months ago and she won't accept it. Comment exposed if you believe she deserved justice." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had spent 3 years building a life with. The man who had proposed to me on a beach in Mexico with a ring he definitely couldn't afford on his salary. The man who had cried when I said yes and told me I was the only person who ever really understood him. He looked small now, shrunken. Like a child caught stealing and trying to rewrite the story so he's the victim. "Is she lying?" I asked. My voice was still calm. It unnerved him more than yelling would have. "Marcus, is Amber lying when she says you've been sleeping with her for a year?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. His eyes were wet. "It's complicated," he said. "Wrong answer." I turned back to Amber. She looked triumphant for half a second until I spoke again. "You said he was going to leave me," I said. "Did he tell you that?" She nodded. "All the time. He said he was just waiting for the right moment. He said you were controlling and your family made him feel like he wasn't good enough. He said once the wedding was over and the money was in joint accounts, he would figure out how to leave without losing everything." The guests made another collective noise. This one was uglier. My dad broke free from my uncle and started toward the altar, but I held up one hand without looking at him. "Not yet," I said. He stopped. That shocked me almost as much as anything else. My dad had never listened to me that easily in my entire life. I walked back toward Marcus. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Jessica," he started. "Please, let me explain. There's nothing complicated about it," I said. I stopped right in front of him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. "You've been cheating on me. You lied to my face for months. You were planning to marry me for access to my family's money and then leave once you had what you wanted." He shook his head frantically. "That's not, I didn't." She's twisting everything. I reached into the hidden pocket I had sewn into my wedding dress. Yes, a hidden pocket. Best decision I ever made. I pulled out my phone. "You want to explain," I said. "Explain this." I turned the phone around so he could see the screen. I had queued up a folder of screenshots, messages between him and Amber. Messages between him and his best man where he explicitly talked about my family's investment portfolio and how much he stood to gain in a divorce. Messages where he called me boring, clingy, and a means to an end. His face drained of all color. The guests couldn't see the screen, but they could see his reaction, and that told them everything. "Where did you?" he whispered. "How long have you?" 3 weeks, I said. "I've known for 3 weeks. And I let you keep lying because I wanted to see how far you would take it." Turns out, all the way to the altar, I turned to face the crowd. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My voice didn't waver. "I need everyone to know something," I said. "I didn't plan this dramatic confrontation. Amber showing up was her choice. But I'm glad she did because it saves me from having to do this privately." I pulled a folded piece of paper from the same pocket. The lawyer had delivered it yesterday. I hadn't been sure I would use it. Part of me had still hoped that maybe I was wrong, that maybe Marcus would confess before the ceremony and we could call it off quietly. But he hadn't. He had walked into this chapel, looked me in the eyes, and prepared to say vows he didn't mean. "This is an annulment filing," I said. "Pre-signed by me and ready to be filed the second this ceremony doesn't happen. I also have a restraining order ready to go if Marcus tries to contact me after today. And I've already moved all of my assets into accounts he has no access to. So if anyone here thought this wedding was happening, I have bad news." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Even Amber looked stunned. This wasn't the chaos she had come here to create. She had wanted me to crumble, to scream, to fight her for a man who wasn't worth either of our time. Instead, she was watching me dismantle him with paperwork. Marcus reached for my arm. "Don't," I said. I stepped back. "If you touch me, that restraining order gets filed today instead of being held as insurance." He pulled his hand back like I had burned him. "Jessica, please," he said. His voice cracked. "I love you. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll do anything." 3 years, I said. "I gave you 3 years of my life. I introduced you to my family. I defended you when my dad said you were using me. I ignored every single red flag because I wanted to believe you were who you pretended to be. And you were planning to rob me. Not just break my heart. Rob me." He started crying. Real tears this time, streaming down his face, his shoulders shaking. But I knew him well enough now to recognize it for what it was. He wasn't sorry for hurting me. He was sorry he got caught. There's a difference. I turned back to the guests. Most of them were people I loved. My family, my friends, co-workers who had taken time off to be here. Then there were Marcus's people. His parents sitting near the back looking horrified. His best man standing at the altar looking like he wanted to melt into the floor because he knew those messages I mentioned included him. His groomsmen shuffling uncomfortably. "I'm sorry you all got dressed up for nothing," I said. "But I'm not sorry this happened. I would rather find out now than 5 years and 2 kids from now when the divorce would cost me more than just money. If you came here because you care about me, thank you. Stay for the reception. The food's already paid for and the bar is open. If you came here for Marcus, there's the door. Type yes if you want to see all targets hit at once." A few people laughed, nervous laughter but still laughter. It broke some of the tension. My mom stood up and walked to me. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on tight. My dad followed. Then Kayla. Then my brother. Within seconds, I was surrounded by my people, a wall of support between me and Marcus. Over their shoulders, I saw Marcus's best man grab his arm and start pulling him toward the side exit. Marcus looked back at me once. I didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I wasn't broken. Amber was still standing in the aisle looking lost. For a second, I almost felt bad for her. She had been lied to too, fed promises Marcus never intended to keep. She was just another tool he used. But then I remembered the messages, the ones where she called me names. The ones where she laughed about how clueless I was. The ones where she actively helped him plan how to access my money. My sympathy evaporated. "You should leave," I told her. "Unless you want to explain to everyone here how you helped him map out my family's financial situation." Her eyes went wide. She didn't know I had those messages. She turned and practically ran for the door. Her red dress disappeared through the chapel entrance and I never saw her again. The officiant, bless him, cleared his throat. He was an older man, probably in his 70s, and he had done hundreds of weddings. I doubt any of them had gone like this. "Ma'am," he said gently. "Do you need anything? A glass of water? A moment?" I shook my head. "I need everyone to head to the reception hall," I said. I turned back to the crowd. My voice was stronger now. I meant what I said. The party's still happening. I paid for an open bar and a DJ and a ridiculous amount of shrimp cocktail. We're not wasting it. Someone in the back whooped. Then someone else. Then the whole chapel filled with applause. Not the polite golf clap you get at the end of a ceremony. Real applause. The kind you give when someone does something brave. I stood there in my wedding dress that I would never wear again, surrounded by people I loved, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. An hour later, I was at the reception hall with my dress bustled up and a glass of champagne in my hand. DJ was playing dancing music and people were actually having a good time. My aunt cornered me near the dessert table. "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen," she said. "Where did you learn to stay that calm?" "Therapy," I said. "And spite. Mostly spite." She laughed so hard she snorted. My cousin Leo, the one who had helped me gather evidence, pulled me aside. "You know he's going to try to come back," he said. "In a few weeks when this dies down, he's going to show up with flowers and apologies." "I know," I said. "That's why I filed the restraining order an hour ago." He blinked. "Wait, I thought you said you were holding it as insurance." "I lied," I said. "It's already active. If he comes within 500 feet of me, my house, or my job, he gets arrested." Leo grinned. "You're terrifying. I'll take that as a compliment." The rest of the night blurred together in a surprisingly good way. I danced with my dad. I gave a speech thanking everyone for coming and for not judging me for turning my wedding into a crime scene. I ate 3 pieces of cake. Somewhere around midnight, after most of the guests had left, Kayla sat down next to me. We were on the floor in the corner, shoes off, dresses rumpled. "How are you really doing?" she asked. I thought about it. "Honestly," I said, "I feel free. If this shocked you, comment betrayed below." She nodded. "Good. Because you deserve better than that garbage human." "I know," I said. And the wildest part is I really do know now. For 3 weeks I knew what he was and I still showed up today. Part of me wonders if that makes me stupid. "It makes you human," Kayla said, "and it makes you smart. You didn't just catch him. You planned. You protected yourself. You turned his whole plan against him. That's not stupid. That's revenge." I smiled. The first real smile all day. Maybe it was. The next morning I woke up in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. My dress was hanging on the back of the door, expensive and useless. I had a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail, probably Marcus from a burner phone. I blocked it. Then I opened my laptop and started writing. I wrote everything down. The receipt, the messages, the planning, the confrontation, every detail I could remember. When I was done, I posted it to Reddit on a throwaway account. Within 6 hours, it had 10,000 upvotes and hundreds of comments calling Marcus every name in the book and calling me a hero. A few people asked if it was real. Someone said it sounded too cinematic. I didn't care. It was real to me, and writing it down made it feel like I was closing a chapter instead of just surviving one. 2 weeks later, Marcus's best man reached out through a mutual friend. He said Marcus wanted to apologize, wanted to explain, wanted closure. I sent back a 3-word message. Already got it. I never heard from him again. If you made it this far, do 3 things. 1, hit that like button so this reaches other people who need to hear it. 2, comment 1 thing you would have done differently if you were in my position. And 3, subscribe because I'm going to keep sharing real stories about standing up to people who think they can use you. The algorithm only shows this to people who engage, so if you want more content like this, let me know you're here. The truth is, I didn't plan for my wedding to become the most dramatic day of my life. I planned for it to be the happiest. But sometimes the trash takes itself out, and all you can do is make sure it doesn't come back. Marcus taught me something valuable. He taught me that love without honesty is just manipulation with better marketing. And I'm done falling for the marketing.